Today, in episode 14 of the 1001 Movies series, we are reviewing episode 5, which is actually the second movie. Okay, so now that is clear as mud on Dagobah, let's review some Star Wars. Now, I usually try and keep all of my reviews spoiler-free, but in this case I'm gonna have to break that rule because, well, first of all, I would think just about everybody's seen this movie already, and secondly, because of the big, important reveal in this movie that is a huge spoiler, but just kinda has to be talked about for obvious reasons. So, if somehow you don't know what I'm talking about, and you haven't seen this movie, you've been warned. And also, go see this movie. Following the immense success of the first Star Wars movie in 1977, it was only inevitable that a sequel would be made. And while most high-profile sequels end up being total failures...
Failure! You're still a failure! Failure! I can smell the failure! Failure!
As studios are more interested in making money than anything else, Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, is one of those rare exceptions where the sequel is considered to be better than the original. Most Star Wars fans agree that Empire is the best movie in the series, although I'd say Return of the Jedi gives it a run for its money, but we'll get to that later. With a bigger budget and silenced doubters, The Empire Strikes Back had ample opportunity to improve upon its predecessor, which, to its credit, it absolutely did. Not only are the visuals improved, the action sequences are better than ever, but everything else about the world of Star Wars just gets better. In my review of the last movie, I mentioned how Star Wars 1977's biggest success as an engaging film was its deep and expansive lore. And in this movie, they didn't just retread over the same ground hoping that the nostalgia kick would be enough to satiate audiences. They actually expanded the lore. In Empire Strikes Back, we get to explore all kinds of new places like the ice planet Hoth, Cloud City, the asteroid field, and the swamp of Dagobah, home to a certain Muppet who doesn't like seagulls.
Everybody can agree that seagulls are the worst.
The characters, too, are improved and expanded upon. Not only do the characters we already know and love become more developed and more interesting, but we are introduced to a host of new and amazing characters as well. There's the aforementioned Yoda, a wise yet humorous Jedi Master who's got total Master Oogway Uncle Iroh vibes. Or I guess it's the other way around because Yoda came first. In any case, he's a silly but wise old guy who's actually a secret badass. There's also Boba Fett. We get our first look at the new Emperor, and of course, there's Han Solo's old friend, Lando Calrissian. Despite what eventually goes down between Lando and Han, from the very first interaction these two have, we can clearly see that they have a colorful past. And that's another one of this movie's great strengths. It's so effective with its character development. There's that famous moment when Han is being lowered into the carbonite and Leia says, "I love you," and Han just responds with, "I know." And in just a small moment like that, we know so much about the relationship that these two have, and it's many small moments like this throughout the film that make the character development so good. On a side note, the reason why Han was frozen was because Harrison Ford wasn't sure that he wanted to return for another sequel, so George Lucas decided to literally freeze his character arc just in case he wouldn't return. It's a clever way to terminate the character without actually killing him, so he could come back if he needed to. Yet another reason why this movie is so great is the intensity and increased action. After losing so badly in the last movie, the Empire is out for blood here. Vader is unhinged, there's no Tarkin to hold him on a leash anymore, so he's killing his own men left and right for the slightest failures.
Failure! 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 Failure!
Which I would imagine would cause quite the stressful work environment. The Empire is constantly pursuing the rebels. From the opening scene on Hoth all the way to the end credits, there isn't a moment where our heroes are not on the run. It makes the whole movie feel very dangerous and ominous, as you just know that bad things are going to happen at some point. There are two scenes in particular that I remember being scared of as a kid. The scene on Hoth where Luke is trapped in the Wampa cave, and the scene where Luke fights Vader. In both these scenes, Luke just feels so outmatched, and while he was able to escape the Wampa, Vader is another story. Which brings us to the most famous moment in Star Wars history.
Turn to the dark side and join me.
I'll never join you! You killed my father!
No, Luke. I am your father.
That's not true! That's impossible!
And Princess Leia is your sister.
That's not true! That's improbable!
And the Empire will be defeated by Ewoks.
That's very unlikely.
And as a child, I built C-3PO.
Huh? Look, if you're not going to take this seriously, I'm out.
Well, it didn't go exactly like that, but anyway, you get the picture. We get the biggest movie reveal of all time. Luke barely escapes with his life. Han is frozen in carbonite, and the rebels are still running. And then the movie ends. And audiences have to wait 3 more years to see what happens next. Can you imagine that today? I don't know if we can handle it. We're just too impatient in the age of the internet. Like, the wait between Avengers Infinity War and Endgame felt like a long time, but that was only 1 year. Plus, we had 2 movies in between them. Could you imagine having to wait to find out what happens after Infinity Wars for 3 years? Between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, there was nothing but question marks and speculation. And did I mention, for 3 years? And that is one final thing that makes this movie awesome. It wasn't afraid to take big chances. Ending the movie on a down note is a huge risk, and its audiences could easily have been angry with it, but instead it had the opposite effect. It had the effect of making Empire Strikes Back one of the greatest and boldest sequels ever made. So I really can't find any problems with this movie. Okay, well, maybe one problem. Pre-1983 Star Wars fans, how little did you know? I'm giving Empire Strikes Back a D for Dad's Rock, and so does this movie. Thank you for watching, may the Force be with you, good night, and...
Subscribe.